holiday season, treat yourself. Treat yourself to candy. Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
From NJ.com, this is Talk is Cheap, a New York Giants podcast. We're talking Big Blue football all year round.
What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt back here for the latest episode of the Talk is Cheap podcast. I am here with Darryl, Slater. Somehow, the Giants lost again. It was never close. And yet we still have to sit here and talk about the playoffs because the NFC East is just a complete dumpster fire like we always knew it was. The Giants lost. They were the first game out of the NFC East teams last Sunday. They lost in a way that I think everybody just kind of assumed their season was over. I wouldn't be surprised if in the locker room they felt that way, maybe. I mean, they all talk about how they weren't paying attention to the game, but so then you go to the afternoon games, and Washington out of the gate is just getting killed. And we're like, all right, well, that game we not even worth tracking anymore. And the Eagles come out and they look like they're going to kill the Cowboys. They go up like 14-0 or whatever it is, and then they get blown out in the end. It was a really I know even for you specifically, as you were writing about like the implications of whether the Giants were eliminated or whether they were still in it. Like we were texting each other throughout it, but that was an interesting evening, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had a story written actually that the Giants were eliminated because they needed 2 things to happen for them to stay in the race. And I had written previously all these items about how they would, win a tiebreaker in the very situation that we're in now, looking at right now, that they're in, with all these teams finishing 1-1 and the Giants winning the division at 6-10 and how they win it with a 3-way tiebreaker, all the things that I wound up having to scramble to copy and paste into the story that got totally overhauled. But obviously it wasn't, you could tell the Cowboy game was tipping that way after a little while. The Eagles had kind of just reached the end of their rope this season. And of course, Washington just completely listless without Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins, total disaster on every front.
Not even on the team anymore.
Yeah. So here the Giants are with a chance to win it at 6-10 and make the play and host a playoff game, which is like insane. I'm pretty sure that there's never been a 6-10 division champion.
There hasn't. No, this would be the first one. And
this would be the first one.
And so I think Washington, Dallas, and the Giants, their record at various points in the season was bad enough that no team with that record has ever made the playoffs. So the Giants would be the first team to ever start 1-7 and make it as well. Which, I mean, it's it's always crazy when there's still records like that are happening like 100 years into the NFL. But I mean, it also makes sense when you think about how hard it is to come back from being 1-7. You have to be in a historically bad division, which they're in, and so they're still in it. But like, I mean, we can even use this as a chance to like talk about this last game because like they've looked bad the last 3 weeks on both sides of the ball. Really, I mean, the defense, they haven't always been put in the best position by the offense. I think a couple weeks ago they kept having the Cardinals or maybe it was the Browns, where the Browns kept having the field position like at midfield because special teams kept messing up or, they were turning it over or whatever. But yeah, these last 3 weeks, the offense has just been non-existent. This last week, the defense's weaknesses were exposed, and Patrick Graham, there was nothing that even he could do to scheme around it because the Ravens, they were like, we're going to run the ball down your throats, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. And when they passed it, they weren't getting pressure on them. Like the pass rusher, like it almost emerged as I still probably think receiver is like the more impactful thing they need to get just in terms of like, this is an offensive league and they can't score. But like, you can make the case that pass rusher is their biggest need this offseason too, I think.
Major issue, and Steve Politi wrote about it coming out of the game. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, just to beat, there's a lot of mobile quarterbacks in the NFL now, and you need to be able to have guys that can get in, that can get off their blocks. And, the secondary, they have some pieces back there, but they're only as good as the front. And the front, Leonard Williams has kind of gone invisible the last 3 weeks. And they just don't have the outside linebackers to rush the passer. And, Blake Martinez is fine, but the other inside linebacker is Mr. Irrelevant. So their weaknesses, like they were able to hide them for so long this season through schemes and being creative, and they kind of just ran out of that, and they're kind of are who they are, and it kind of just goes back to what we always talk about with Dave Gettleman. But like, based on what I've seen the last 3 weeks, I have no reason to think they're going to beat. I know the Cowboys are always liable to blow it, but I've seen nothing to believe they can stop. Number one, stop the Cowboys offense, which has averaged like 35 points a game the last 3 weeks, and number two, that this offense can score on anybody, even if the Cowboys defense is as bad as it is.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Giants have been bad on both sides of the ball the past 3 weeks. The bottom line is they have to win. The people are forgetting they have to win this game on Sunday to even be paying attention to the one.
Even then, they might not get in still. Yeah,
You're right, of course, but they still have to do their part, and they haven't even come close to doing their part the past 3 weeks against good teams. Now, Dallas is obviously not as good as Arizona, Cleveland, or Baltimore, of course, but they're still a team with more firepower than the Giants, and the team that's playing better right now. The Giants are playing poorly, albeit against better competition than the Cowboys. The Cowboys are playing quite well, and they're surging here, and they're in the same 3-game winning streak against Bengals, Niners, Eagles. Not great, but we talked about this very situation. I think a month ago, 5 weeks ago, you said it. I mean, look at the Cowboys schedule down the stretch. You were saying I think they might be able to late surge, win the division, and maybe they will. And so that's where the Giants are at. They're not playing well on either side of the ball. Entering a game against a Zeke Elliott team, and Zeke Elliott coming off his best game of the season. He's had a down year. Yeah. The Giants' run defense coming off probably its worst game of the season against the Ravens. So this doesn't line up great for the Giants because, look, I mean, it's not like their offense is just playing poorly. They've been a disaster on defense the last 3 weeks. They have not played any of these teams close. So they're going to need a big-time reversal of those fortunes, and they're going to need Daniel Jones to really have enough firepower to keep up with this Cowboys offense, because I don't see the Giants defense limiting even with Andy Dalton at quarterback, the Cowboys offense to a slow day. So that's sort of how I see it. And of course, if they don't win the game, then the night game means nothing for them.
Yeah, I mean, and this is always the discussion around the Cowboys. Like everybody was picking them to win the division, and a lot of people are picking them to be an NFC contender. That obviously was overdone, but it's because you look at the firepower they have on offense. You almost like just wonder, like, we'd actually be able to evaluate Daniel Jones if he had Cowboys weapons. I mean, they spent a lot to get them. They picked Zeke Elliott 2nd overall or whatever it was, or 4th, or I think he was 4th. Mm-hmm. Traded a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, drafted CeeDee Lamb in the first round. They drafted Michael Gallup pretty early. So they have all Dak Prescott was supposed to be the quarterback, and then he got hurt in that last Giants game, which feels like years ago at this point. But yeah, like those are 3 wide receivers and a running back that, the Giants have a few talented defensive players, but they can't cover everybody. James Bradbury can only cover one of those wide receivers. The other one is going to be on Isaac Yiadom, who's kind of come back down to earth. And you saw against the Eagles, Andy Dalton did a good job of, going away from their top. He wasn't throwing towards Darius Slay. He was throwing it towards their undrafted rookie that was starting. So I imagine they're going to target whoever Isaac Yiadom is covering on Sunday. And the last time they played, Ryan Lewis was a starter, which, like, I remember that name. Like, it feels like ages ago that he was a starter. And Michael Gallup roasted him in that game. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they need – the only chance they have really is if they get to the quarterback, and they've shown no evidence they can do that.
Nope. And I think, if you put it on the other side, the only chance they have is if they score a lot of points. Yeah. I really think that's
going to be a shootout if they want to be in it. Yeah.
And this team is not equipped to do that. I mean, I understand the Cowboys defensively are no great shakes this year, and the Giants did play them in a shootout in the first game. But I just don't see that the Giants would be. I mean, I feel like we're completely discounting the Giants' chances in this game, and maybe that's not fair because the Cowboys are not a great team. But again, they're playing really well right now, and the Giants are not. Period. The Cowboys are playing really well right now. The Giants are not. I mean, that's what if the Giants were playing Washington in this game, I think it's a totally different conversation. And then you talk Cowboys Eagles was this week, whatever. Anyway, but I just think that this is the worst possible matchup at the worst possible time of any of these teams in the division, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, of course, they'd love to be playing the Eagles as Doug Peterson potentially walks the plank, but it's not a good matchup. It's not for the way they've been playing.
I mean, but at the same time, if this team wants to be a playoff team and wants to say
Sure.
we've made progress
Gotta
from
beat
the
a good team.
losing, like you have to you have to win a game that matters also, and like so that they have every. I think it would be fair to criticize, at Joe Judge. He's had. You have to consider all the talent, the lack of talent he has on his roster, and all that. But like at a certain point, they go into Week 17 somehow still in it, and they have all they have to do is win, and then the rest hopefully takes care of itself. But if you don't win, then it's not even a discussion. All of a sudden, you're 5 wins. They could potentially still finish in last in the division, which is kind of like one of the craziest, storylines of this week is how, and I wrote about this after Sunday. There are scenarios where they can either win the division or get the number 3 overall pick, and I can't imagine that's ever happened in the history of the NFL going
That's
into the
insane.
last week. I mean, those scenarios are wild where they need like 6 bad teams to win and they have to lose, so it's not going to happen. But the idea that like that even is like on the table is just absolutely bonkers.
I mean, we talked about this. I mean, 19 is the pick if you are the worst team and lose in the first round. Obviously, if you win a game in the playoffs, you move up further. I mean, the Giants right now are 8th at 5-10. So, that's a crazy piece of trivia.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes into the discussion I did want to have a little bit on here because I've seen it a lot on social media. It kind of goes into the idea, a lot of teams deal with it this time of the year, like the benefit of either losing the last game and getting a better draft pick or trying to win and hoping for the best or whatever. I think it's a very interesting discussion because this is a team that's been such a loser for so long. I understand why a lot of fans want to win. I like they're obviously not going to go out and lose on purpose. That's just not how the Joe Judge for sure is wired, and I don't think the organization would. I mean, they weren't even trying to lose for years when they should have been more intensely trying to lose. So that's not going to happen. But like, I would say for the future of this franchise, they probably still would be better off getting a better draft pick this next year because I do think there are some reasons for optimism going forward. Certainly playing the playoffs would be a positive, but if you go to the playoffs and get killed, I don't really know how beneficial that is because I think they would play the Buccaneers as of now. Maybe
I think so.
I mean, the storyline of Tom Brady playing the Giants is too rich, and they probably I don't know some crazy stuff will probably happen, but I don't know. I think you've seen enough positive momentum with Joe Judge and the staff, and you kind of know what your needs are. That I think you go into this offseason, you have really good draft picks, so you can use that to fill one of the needs, and then some of the money that you build up from cutting some guys you use on the other need, and I think you're in pretty good shape. I mean, you can still get a very good player at 19, certainly, and I've seen people argue that too. But you also like the odds of you getting a great player decrease as you get further down in the order. That's just kind of like a historical fact. So, I would say like the worst case scenario is probably that they win and then Washington wins, so they don't get in anyway. So then they don't have as good of a draft pick as they could have or whatever. But I don't know what is your kind of take on that whole?
Well, I think it depends on what you think of Dave Gettleman. If you think Dave Gettleman, I mean, if they make the playoffs,
that's part of it too. By the way, what does it mean for his job security?
And that's going to have long-lasting implications for the organization because all right. So, for instance, say you like Dave Gettleman, say you think he can be the guy, or you can kind of take it or leave it with him, right? And you say, all right, they make the playoffs, then obviously he stays, right? He's not going to get fired if they make the playoffs. If he stays, you're talking about Gettleman going into his 4th year. And are they going to have to give him a year, extend his contract by a year? But that's another offseason where he's shaping your roster for the future. These are long-term implication decisions that he'll be making. So yeah, I mean, if the Giants make the playoffs and pick, say, 19th and go one and done in the playoffs, it's not just that implication of it. It's Dave Gettleman staying. And if you don't think he's the right guy, then, obviously you wouldn't like to see him stay. And so what do would you like to see the Giants make the playoffs at 6-10, lose in the first round, pick 19th, have Gettleman stay? I think if you don't like Gettleman, that's the worst possible scenario, right? Because who can? It's one game in the playoffs. Now, of course, the optimism in any fan would be, hey, get in, make some noise. Of course, if the Giants make a run and even win a game in the playoffs, I think some fan, you could look at that and say, wow, really impressive. But and of course, once you're in, you have a shot at anything. But I think that's we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So it's the Gettleman factor too here, in addition to the draft pick.
And I've always thought this when it comes to like, I would hope that behind the scenes in organizations that they're not basing it on one game. Like that seems insane to me. Like if you're so close to firing a guy, if you're so close to firing a guy that the one game at the end of the season is going to decide whether you keep him or not, then you should not keep him. With coaches or whatever it may be, like you need to look at the whole picture. You need to look at if you want to base on this whole season, I get that. Like if you want to say, okay, over the course of this whole season, we saw some things that we're optimistic about going forward. I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily from Gettleman's perspective, but like I could see Mara making that argument, and he very well might make that argument this offseason.
I would be shocked though if say they went 6-10, they lost, and they went 1 and done in the playoffs. I would be shocked if he was fired. Wouldn't you?
Yeah. That's what I mean though. Like that's I mean they'll hang their hat on the fact that they made the playoffs, but they tripped into the playoffs.
Like, but do you think I don't think he'll get fired, but
no. I lean in general towards him not getting fired at this point.
Yes.
Just because like just the narrative around the team, like within the team, I mean, it just seems like he's getting a lot of credit for the positive when I think, and I think you agree, that they would be in better shape if he had done a better job. So
of course he's done a few good things that are showing
reason for optimism, but they lost like 5 games by less than 10 points. They would have won at least 1 or 2 of those if a few of his mistakes aren't there.
You know, the one thing about Gettleman, I mean, it's easy to forget his mistakes because so many of them are not around anymore. It's easy to forget Nate Solder because he's not here.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget DeAndre Baker because he's not, he's on the practice squad with the Chiefs, but he's not, these guys aren't even present on Sundays in the NFL, right? So obviously Golden Tate, was a mistake and he's still with the Giants. It's easy to forget Alec Ogletree, another guy who is not in the league. So these guys are kind of
Patrick Omame, or however you say it.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Jonathan Stewart. Yeah, all those moves that he made. But 2018 has the offseason of 2018 set back this franchise like multiple years.
But then it's people have these short memories, right? And some people do. I'm sure thinking Giant fans will look at this and say, I don't forget DeAndre Baker. I don't forget.
Yeah, I mean, I think more fans than not still want Gettleman gone, but sure, I think they also are so I've seen like fans fighting with each other about like, do I want them to win because it means Gettleman is going to stay, or do I want them to lose because it means he's going to go? Like I want to go to the playoffs, so I might
probably stay regardless.
Yeah. I mean, I could I've seen people report, and I don't think the Giants really let this stuff out, so I don't know if I believe all their. I don't know. I think the only person that knows what's going to happen is John Mara and Steve Tisch. And maybe Joe Judge has some input in there. I don't get the sense that they're the type of organization that like even has made a decision yet necessarily. But like I've seen stuff about like Dave Gettleman being reassigned or retiring. I don't see him retiring. So I don't know. Maybe this is his last year next year, and you use next year where you say, all right, we'll get a better offense around him, and then this will be the year we evaluate. I mean, the COVID thing, like John Mara kind of like laid the groundwork in his preseason press conference about how you have to adjust your evaluation because of the COVID situation. Yeah. And I get that to a degree. And Gettleman had a better offseason, but like still, his mistakes were still glaring. Like the fact they didn't add any receivers. Like if he had added the wrong receiver, like, okay, at least he tried, but he didn't add any wide receivers. They only signed Tyler Fackrell and drafted an edge rusher in the 7th round. Like these are two of the most important positions because it's a passing league. So I don't know. He deserves praise for Bradbury, Martinez, Logan Ryan, whatever, but like the only we're able to sign Logan Ryan because
this holiday season, treat yourself. Treat yourself to candy. Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Nate Solder opted out, so...
Right. And I guess with Gettleman, I think the retiring thing would look so weird and lame, like no one would believe that he actually retired, he retired this year when he was on the hot seat. I think if it's next year and it's another year and they don't play well, I'm sure people will say that too. But I mean, he'll be a year old or whatever. But he made it very clear entering the season that he was full of energy and wanted to prove people wrong. And the Giants made it very clear that he was on the hot seat. So I mean, if it comes out that he retires, and maybe he would, but no one would look at it like that, or no one would believe that he actually retired. They would say he was forced out. I mean, if you're Gettleman and they're going to fire you or say, oh, we're going to let you retire, I would say, fire me. Don't make me look like a fool.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to retire. You know what I mean? Like,
that's kind of like the whole like John Mara, they like treating their own as well as they can or whatever kind of thing. So
sure. And that's why I think ultimately he will be back. I think that's part of it. They have a long-standing relationship. Mara's, John Mara and Steve Tisch and Dave Gettleman. I think they like him. And he's given him enough. He's given him enough to stay.
Yeah, like he had his best offseason. He showed improvement. I think John Mara had the quote where he needs to improve his batting average. He has, but he was below the Mendoza line before that. So
right, and now he's I don't know what the
200, I guess, or he's in 225.
Player. My baseball knowledge is slipping. So
yeah, I haven't paid as much attention to baseball.
I think he's given him enough from their perspective. I think from our perspective, we would say no, he hasn't, and he should be fired. But I think if you're Mara, you can explain it away without I guess the pitchforks are going to come out right anyway. But I think there's enough there for Mara to spin and justify keeping him.
I think what's going to wind up. So I think they're going to need a scapegoat for how bad the offense was, and it's pretty clearly going to be Jason Garrett. You would think, whether that's fair to he's definitely left a lot to be desired, but they also didn't give him enough talent. Like that's just the reality. So like, I mean, they probably need a new offensive coordinator in here anyway. I imagine Joe Judge is the type that is going to be willing to make changes every year. I think Bill Belichick was like that too. So, I mean, we've talked plenty about Garrett, but so to bring it back to Gettleman, and we tie this in, like, so one of the biggest news items of the last week was Logan Ryan, kind of surprising to me, signed a 3-year deal worth $31 million to stay here for long term. And this kind of ties into the Gettleman thing because then it begs the question of, like, who's making these decisions if he's on the hot seat or whatever. My impression about this was I would guess that just based on everything I know about Logan and about Joe Judge, that Joe Judge really probably pushed for this. Logan said that the Giants approached him and asked him if he wanted to stay with the Giants beyond this year. Logan said he said yes. Then they offered him pretty much the exact contract he was looking for in free agency that nobody has given him. He's talked a lot over the last week about how he never felt like a team gave him the respect he deserved until the Giants, and this is a guy who won Super Bowls with the Patriots. So I thought that was interesting. But like, I was definitely surprised by this. I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. I can see the positives and the positives being that he's so important to what they've been able to do this year. He's a leader. He's a good player that can play a lot of spots. The downside is that he's 30. He's going to be one of the 10 highest paid safeties in the league. And now they're not going to be able to keep one of Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson. Like, which side do you fall on, positive or negative here?
I mean, he's a good guy. He's a locker room leader. I mean, look, we don't know if he's a good guy. He seems like a good guy. He's a locker room leader. He's going to be 30, like you said, going into next season. This is a young roster that needs veteran presence. That's all very important. So, I don't think it's wholly positive or wholly negative. I haven't seen any of the full details come out about.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of it has to do with what the cap hit his in 2021 is a big part of it. Yeah.
And really, it's 3 years, $31 million. It's not 3 years, $31 million. Everyone knows that. This is not how NFL contracts work.
Like they could probably get out of it after 2 years or whatever.
Surely they can. Oh my God! Obviously, definitely they'd be able to get out of it after 2 years. That's probably what it really is. It's a 2-year whatever deal with a small dead cap in year 3. So what's the reality? How did they structure the signing bonus? How did they structure the guaranteed money? I mean, however you slice it, you can't hide all that money. So it is a sizable contract, no matter how you slice it. You're talking about a guy who is, I looked it up just now, he's 42nd in PFF's safety ratings this year among safeties who have played 50% of the snaps. 42. Well, Tyrann Mathieu 41. So I guess he's not having a great year, but and Jabril Peppers 39. So then again, Jamal Adams 38, right? So I don't know that these PFF rankings are not gospel, Marcus May is third. He's having a great year. So that's reflective in that. But I don't know if that, I think it's just a lot of money for a guy. For number one, for a guy that old, a guy he's a fine guy, right? But he's not a great player. Period. He's not.
He's good. He's not great. Yeah, I think that's fair.
He's a slightly above average starting NFL player. And for the Giants, could they do better than that if they let him walk and then tried to replace him in the offseason? That's what I think Dave Gettleman looked at and said, maybe we can't do better than this. But it's like with free agency, though, they're overpaying him, very clearly overpaying him. And
that's kind of the thing that people don't realize sometimes with free agency is in order to get somebody, you have to overpay them. Like that's how you get somebody to sign with you.
And that's basically what they did here,
And I think he clearly was a guy that values himself very highly. He says that. And like he didn't get the money he wanted this last offseason, so he didn't sign with anyone. I would have been curious to see what his market would have been, especially with the reduced cap. Which is the only reason why I was like hesitant about whether they should have done it this early. But like at the same time, if they value him this much, you want to get it before he hits free agency. And I think, if they don't, I think you'll be able to kind of tell who they value more out of Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson. Based on, they can't sign Williams right now because he's on the franchise tag. So if they were to go and extend Dalvin Tomlinson before the end of the season or before March, then that kind of means that they've moved on from Leonard. So that's going to be one of the more interesting things I've seen because, like, on one hand, Leonard, obviously had a great year, but it's a contract year and he has a history of not getting sacks. He finally got them this year in his contract year. He's going to demand $18 to $22 million is what somebody I talked to recently told me. That's a lot of money to hand out. And whereas I've heard like 10 to 14 million range for Dalvin. So if you got to decide, do I want to sign Leonard and not be able to sign as many other guys? Or do I want to sign Dalvin and use like that $6 million extra to go and get a starter on defense or something?
And the Giants are middle of the pack in cap space for 2021. In a pinched year, obviously there's teams that are in disastrous situations cap-wise, but it's not like the Giants have a lot of cap space, which is why it gets back to the good point you made earlier there. It depends on how the 2021 cap looks for that Logan Ryan deal. That'll go a long way toward the final verdict on that contract.
Right now, I think over the cap has them at like 16 million for next year. So if you so if it's around it's 31 million over 3 years. So if they can get that first year at like, I don't know, hopefully they can get it at $6 million, $8 million. Like you would hope that they didn't front load it. That would be a very bad idea. And so that'll kind of play a big part, like you said.
And it really, just in layman's terms, for people to kind of understand how it works, they would just backload the salaries so that what they probably would do is give them a small amount, like they'd give them a signing bonus, and that's prorated over the life of the contract. And then there'd probably be a small, fully guaranteed salary for the first year, and then maybe there's some like monster salary in the last year that's not guaranteed, so it's not even real money for the only lingering loose end in that last year would be whatever his signing bonus proration would be. So
the salary cap in the NFL is insane because whatever number you see, like it's not real.
No,
that's why I would describe the salary cap. Whatever you're looking at, like it is just like a breakdown in reality. Like it's so easily changed. Like teams restructure deals to get more money, and they shuffle a bonus here, and everybody like praises a guy for reshuffling his deal, but in reality, he just got his money quicker, like because it's like a bonus. Like that's
what they did with Nate Solder, the Giants, and that's why they're in a tough spot with him because they restructured his contract after the first year and thinking, wow, this guy's pretty good, whatever. And then of course he went in the tank, and now they're stuck with him. So
and then he opted out. Yeah,
there's problems on both sides of that with restructuring. And if you're a player and obviously guys do take pay cuts, but it doesn't happen as often as guys restructuring their contract, which just still means that, like you said, you get the same amount of money. You're just getting it at different times. So, and it's purely a cap related thing. But for a straight up contract like Logan Ryan got, I would be curious to see if, for the purposes of this contract, because it is a 3-year contract, it looks like they don't count 2020 as part of the contract. But
I'm not sure. I guess maybe they in theory could spread the bonus out over 4 years.
Then because they would technically call it a 4-year deal in that case.
Yeah.
And that would be smart to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why. I mean, they haven't officially, I haven't seen the official contract numbers anywhere. They did announce the signing already, so So I wonder if that's why they did it right now, so they can kind of spread it
That's what
out.
the Jets did with Quincy Enunwa a couple of years ago, which was an insanely idiotic contract. But for the purposes of cap, they signed him before the end of the year so they could spread out his signing bonus over 4 years instead of 3 years. So with Logan Ryan, if this really is a contract through 2023, but they term it as a 4-year deal, then that will let them spread out his signing bonus over 4 years in terms of a proration. So that could help things considerably, because you're at the end of the year here, the Giants. Um, you don't the cap space you're having in 2020. You could say you might as well use it. You can roll it over, of course, to 2021. That's the other thing. So it's just however you want to use the cap space and moving it around. But um, it's not like you can really fool the numbers all that much. But I'll be interested to see how they structure it, because a lot of times when a guy does sign before the end of the year, they do allow that to happen with the signing bonus proration being on the current year as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right, before we go, we did talk a little bit about what we think how this is going to play out on Sunday. It sounds like we're not both overly optimistic. I didn't submit my pick just yet, like I always wait till the end of the week, but because I just don't see how the Giants can stop that Cowboys offense, and that they definitely can't match them in scoring. I think I'm going to have it something like 30-17 Cowboys win.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now, what I sent you earlier in the week. Look, I think the one thing we didn't touch on, we did in general, but the last 3 weeks, the Giants have lost 26-7, 20-6, and 27-13. They've gotten spanked again, by better teams than the Cowboys, but they've gotten spanked 3 weeks in a row. That has to concern Giant fans. I mean, I'm sure it does. I've got in this game 27-10 for the Cowboys. I don't see any way that all of a sudden Daniel Jones and this offense is going to become this juggernaut that can keep pace with the Cowboys. And on the other hand, I don't see any way the Giants keep the Cowboys offense under, say, 21-24.
Yeah.
I mean, you think Jones in this offense can score 30? No way, right?
So fun today, Wednesday, when we're recording this, Daniel Jones, like, I don't know if this was on purpose, like as a strategy to trick the Cowboys, or if Joe Judge is going to flip out at him. But Daniel Jones was like, yeah, I mean, if you just watch the film, I haven't been able to move around at all. We've mostly been stuck in the pocket, and that's probably what it's going to be like this week. Like, it was the most honest thing Daniel Jones has ever said. And somebody followed up just to make sure, and he's like, yeah, I just haven't been able to move. So until I'm healthy, you'll probably just be in the pocket. I'm just like, that doesn't seem like something Joe Judge would want out there unless he told him to say it. So
yeah, unless it's the exact opposite. But the one thing,
if that is true and he still can't move, then that reduces my confidence in this offense significantly. So
it's interesting you mentioned that, because I noticed the injury report that came out tonight.
he was a full participant. Yeah,
he was a full participant, number one, and number two, he is no longer listed on there with the ankle injury. It's just the hamstring injury now. So Jones is saying this in one moment on Wednesday, while probably still be limited. And what the injury report tells us is he's actually getting considerably healthier. Now, the hamstrings are going to be a nagging issue. It sounds like the ankle wasn't that big of a deal, considering it's not even listed on the injury report anymore, which means he's not getting treatment for it. So maybe it's a ruse. I don't know. But I think they're going to need more than a ruse.
It was just so strange. I mean, you've been on a lot of Daniel Jones conference calls. He's not someone who gives away anything. You could ask him, hey, what color is the sky right now, Dan? He's like, oh, I don't know, just whatever it usually is. Like that's all we would get from him. Like, he's not someone who gives out information. So just like reading back the quotes, I was just like, all right, this seems interesting. That's
part of the grand plan. Watch him not even be on the injury report tomorrow.
Or what if he's like benched because Joe's like, we don't give out information.
Right. Yeah. So I think no matter what they do, gamesmanship or whatever, or brutal honesty, I'm sure the Cowboys expect him to be limited.
Yeah, and that's also the thing. Like, it could. I mean, maybe it's just him saying that, and then the Cowboys he thinks that Cowboys will overcompensate based on his one quote. But I don't know.
Right, and I'm sure they're preparing for him to be not himself, but with the knowledge that when this guy is mobile, he's really can be really effective. So, like another week where I'd be shocked if they We said this last week. I would be shocked if they won. They didn't win. We picked the other games to not go in their favor, and they did. But this is a week where they're going to actually have to do something. Finally, after 3 straight losses, they controlled their
destiny to win. They've everybody always was saying, well, they're still in the race when they were losing, and now if they lose, it's over. So
they have to win. So. That's what makes it, but I think that's what makes this week fascinating is they can't back in. Some of these teams can back in this week. And I think it makes it fascinating that they're not going to be able to. And I think they'd probably have it no other way. And to ask to get into the playoffs at 5-11 is pure insanity. But so would be a lot of people would have thought 6-10 would be, but the years have been pure insanity in every way anyway. So,
well, and so I found this kind of funny. So there was the quote from John Mara where he's like, "We want to be playing meaningful football in December," and somebody tweeted, I'm like, well, he didn't say that they wanted to be playing meaningful football in January, so this doesn't necessarily fall in line with that.
I think he didn't say that they wanted to be playing well while playing meaningful football. These have been meaningful games. They're not playing well, but
yeah, that's a great point, actually. So we can wrap up on that note. A week from now, this podcast could go one of two ways. We could be previewing a playoff game, or we could be talking about, the season in review and looking ahead to the off season. I'm tired of guessing what's going to happen because it always goes the opposite of what I think. So,
but what about the night game? Do you think that Washington wins or not?
Yeah, I just don't. The Eagles have. I guess the Eagles could play spoiler, but the Eagles aren't a team that has played with a whole lot of energy or motivation all year, and I just don't see them on a Sunday night after sitting on their butts all day, or their season's over. They've just been a mess all year. I just don't see how they can go out and beat. Washington is also kind of a mess. But if Alex Smith plays, I'd say I think
it's a moot point, if you will. You think that it doesn't matter. It winds up not mattering. Washington wins the division. That's your thought.
Exactly. So especially if Alex Smith is a quarterback, if it's Taylor Heineke. Maybe the Eagles have a chance, but
I think the Washington loses if he's the quarterback. If Smith is the quarterback, they win. And I think it's Cowboys, Heineke, Cowboys, Smith, Washington.
There you go. All right, not Giants is what we both say. So certainly they're going to win now to spite us. They listen to this podcast. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening, guys. As always, leave us some reviews, subscribe. And we'll hit you back with another episode next week. And we have no idea what the context will be yet. Thanks for listening.
This holiday season, treat yourself. Treat yourself to candy. Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.